We come to chapter 38 of Charles Dickens' Nicholas Nickleby. Just to bring you up to speed and remind you of some very important happenings in the story, Sir Mulberry Hawk, one of Ralph Nickleby's associates and co-conspirators in the persecution of Nicholas and his sister Kate, had suffered a serious accident, partly at the hands of Nicholas himself. Sir Mulberry had refused to answer a challenge from Nicholas, and in an attempt to escape in his carriage, he had been driven so recklessly that the carriage with him inside it had crashed into a tree, pitching him into the road where he had lain injured, while Nicholas simply went home. We shall soon find out how eventually Sir Mulberry fared, but first of all, we take up the story of how Mrs. Nickleby, Kate, and her brother Nicholas and Smike had, with Miss La Creevy's valued assistance, settled down to share a home together at the cottage so generously provided by the Cheeryble brothers. Living under the same roof with the beloved brother from whom she had been so suddenly and hardly separated, with a mind at ease and free from any persecutions which could call a blush into her cheek or a pang into her heart, Kate seemed to have passed into a new state of being. Her former cheerfulness was restored, her step regained its elasticity and lightness. The colour which had forsaken her cheek visited it once again, and Kate Nickleby looked more beautiful than ever. Such was the result to which Miss La Creevy's ruminations and observations led her, when the cottage had been, as she emphatically said, thoroughly got to rights, from the chimney-pots to the street-door scraper, and the busy little woman had at length a moment's time to think about its inmates. "Which I declare I haven't had since I first came down here," said Miss La Creevy, "for I had thought of nothing but hammers, nails, screwdrivers, gimlets, morning, noon, and night." "You never bestow one thought upon yourself, I believe," returned Kate, smiling. "'Pon my word, my dear, when there are so many other pleasanter things to think of, I should be a goose if I did," said Miss La Creevy. "By the by, though, I have thought of somebody. Do you know, I observe a great change in one of this family, a very extraordinary change." "In whom?" asked Kate anxiously. "Not in— No, not in your brother, my dear," returned Miss La Creevy, anticipating the close of the sentence, "for he is always the same affectionate, good-natured, clever creature. No, Smike, as he will be called, poor fellow, for he won't hear of a Mr. before his name, is greatly altered, even in this short time." "How?" asked Kate. "Not in health?" No, perhaps not in health exactly," said Miss La Creevy, pausing to consider. "Although he is a worn and feeble creature, and he has that in his face which it would wring my heart to see in yours. No, not in health." "How then?" "I scarcely know how," said the miniature painter, "but I have watched him, and he has brought the tears into my eyes many times. It is not a very difficult matter to do, certainly, for I am easily melted. Still, I think these came with good cause and reason. I am sure that since he has been here he has grown, from some strong cause, more conscious of his weak intellect. He feels it more. It gives him greater pain to know that he wanders sometimes and cannot understand very simple things. I have watched him when you have not been by, my dear, sit brooding by himself with such a look of pain as I could scarcely bear to see, and then get up and leave the room, so sorrowfully and in such dejection that I cannot tell you how it has hurt me. Not 3 weeks ago he was a light-hearted, busy creature, overjoyed to be in a bustle, and as happy as the day was long. Now he is another being, the same willing, harmless, faithful, loving creature, but the same in nothing else. Surely this will pass off, said Kate. Poor fellow. I hope, returned her little friend with a gravity very unusual in her, I hope it may. I hope, for the sake of the poor lad, that it may. However, said Miss La Creevy, relapsing into her cheerful chattering tone, which was habitual to her, I have said my say, and a very long say it is, and probably a very wrong say too. I shouldn't wonder at all. I shall cheer him up tonight at all events, for he is to be my squire and escort all the way to the Strand. I shall talk on and on and on, and never leave off until I have roused him into a laugh at something. So the sooner he goes, the better for him. The sooner I go, the better for me, I am sure, or else I shall have my maid gallivanting with someone who may rob the house. Though what there is to take away besides tables and chairs I do not know, except the miniatures, of course, and he is a very clever thief who can dispose of them to any great advantage, for I can't, I know, that is the honest truth. So saying, little Miss La Creevy hid her face in a very flat bonnet, and herself in a very big shawl, and fixing herself tightly into the latter by means of a large pin, declared that the omnibus might come as soon as it pleased, for she was quite ready. But there was still Mrs. Nickleby to take leave of, and long before that good lady had concluded some reminiscences bearing upon and appropriate to the occasion, the omnibus did indeed arrive. This put Miss La Creevy in a great bustle, in consequence whereof, as she secretly rewarded the servant girl with 18 pence behind the street door, she pulled out of her reticule 10 pennyworth of halfpennies, which rolled into all the possible corners of the passage and occupied some considerable time in the picking up. This ceremony, of course, had to be succeeded by a second kissing of Kate and Mrs. Nickleby, and a gathering together of the little basket and brown paper parcel, during which proceeding the omnibus, as Miss La Creevy protested, swore so dreadfully that it was quite awful to hear it. At length, and at last, it made a feint of going away, and then Miss La Creevy darted out and darted in, apologizing with great volubility to all the passengers, and declaring that she wouldn't purposely have kept them waiting on any account whatever. While she was looking about for a convenient seat, the conductor pushed Smike in and cried that it was all right, though of course it wasn't, and went away the huge vehicle, with the noise of 6 brewers' drays at least. Leaving the omnibus to pursue its journey at the pleasure of the conductor aforementioned, who lounged gracefully on his little shelf behind, smoking an odoriferous cigar, and leaving it to stop or go on or gallop or crawl as that gentleman deemed expedient and advisable, this narrative may now, embrace the opportunity of ascertaining the condition of Sir Mulberry Hawk, and to what extent he had by this time recovered from the injuries consequent on being flung violently from his cabriolet, which circumstances have already been detailed. With a shattered limb, a body severely bruised, a face disfigured by half-healed scars, and pallid from the exhaustion of recent pain and fever, Sir Mulberry Hawk lay stretched upon his back on the couch to which he was doomed to be a prisoner for some weeks yet to come. Mr. Pike and Mr. Pluck sat drinking hard in the next room, now and then varying the monotonous murmurs of their conversation with a half-smothered laugh, while the young Lord Frederick Verisopht, the only member of the party who was not thoroughly irredeemable and who really had a kind heart, sat beside his mentor with a cigar in his mouth and read to him by the light of a lamp such scraps of intelligence from a newspaper of the day as it was most likely to yield him interest or amusement. "Curse those hounds!" said the invalid, turning his head impatiently towards the adjoining room. "Will nothing stop their infernal throats?" Messrs. Pike and Pluck heard the exclamation and stopped immediately, winking at each other as they did so, and filling their glasses once again to the brim, as some recompense for the deprivation of speech. "Damn!" muttered the sick man between his teeth and writhing impatiently in his bed. "Isn't this mattress hard enough, and the room dull enough, and the pain bad enough, but they must torture me? What's the time?" "8:30, replied his friend. "Here, draw the table nearer. Let us have the cards again," said Sir Mulberry. "More piquet. Come." It was curious to see how eagerly the sick man, debarred from any change of position save the mere turning of his head from side to side, watched every motion of his friend in the progress of the game, and with what eagerness and interest he played, and yet how warily and coolly. His address and skill were more than 20 times a match for Lord Frederick, who could make little head against them even when fortune favoured him with good cards, which wasn't very often the case. Sir Mulberry won every game, and when his companion threw down the cards and refused to play any longer, thrust forth his wasted arm and caught up the money, the stakes, with a boastful oath and the same hoarse laugh, though considerably lowered in the tone, that he had resounded in Ralph Nickleby's dining room some months before. While he was thus occupied, his manservant appeared to announce that Mr. Ralph Nickleby was below and wished to know how he was tonight. "Better!" said Sir Mulberry impatiently. "Mr. Nickleby wishes to know, sir—" "I tell you, better!" replied Sir Mulberry, striking his hand upon the table. The servant hesitated for a moment or two, and then said that Mr. Nickleby had requested permission to see Sir Mulberry Hawk, if it was not inconvenient. "Well, it is inconvenient. I can't see him. I can't see anybody," said his master, more violently than before. "You know that, you blockhead!" I am very sorry, sir," returned the servant, "but Mr. Nickleby pressed so much, sir." The fact was that Ralph Nickleby had bribed the man, who, being anxious to earn his money with a view to future favours, held the door in his hand and ventured to linger still. "Did he say whether he had any business to speak about?" inquired Sir Mulberry, after a little impatient consideration. No, sir. He said he wished to see you, sir, particularly. Mr. Nickleby said that, sir. Oh, tell him to come up. Here, cried Sir Mulberry, calling the man back, as he passed his hand over his disfigured face. Move that lamp. Put it on the stand behind me. Wheel that table away and place a chair there. Further off, further off. There, leave it so. Go. The man obeyed these instructions, as if he quite comprehended the motive with which they were dictated, and left the room. Lord Frederick Verisopht, remarking that he would look in presently, strolled into the adjoining apartment and closed the folding door behind him. Then was heard a subdued footstep on the stair, and Ralph Nickleby, hat in hand, crept softly into the room, with his body bent forward as if in profound respect, and his eyes fixed upon the face of his worthy client. "Well, Nickleby," said Sir Mulberry, motioning him to the chair by the couch side, and waving his hand in assumed carelessness. "I have had a bad accident, as you see." "I see indeed," rejoined Ralph, with the same steady gaze. "Bad, very bad. I should not have known you, Sir Mulberry. My dear sir, this is very bad." Ralph's manner was one of profound humility and respect, and his tone of voice was that which the gentlest consideration for a sick man would have taught a visitor to assume. But the expression of his face, Sir Mulberry's being averted, was in extraordinary contrast, and as he stood in his usual attitude, calmly looking at the prostrate form before him, all that part of his features which was not cast into the shadow by his protruding and contracted brows bore the impress of a sarcastic smile. "Sit down," said Sir Mulberry, turning towards him, as though with a violent effort. "Am I a sight, that you should stand gazing at me?" As he turned his face, Ralph recoiled a step or two, and making as though he were irresistibly impelled to express astonishment, but was determined not to do so, sat down with well-affected confusion. "I have inquired at the door, Sir Mulberry, every day," said Ralph. "Twice a day, indeed, at first, and to-night, presuming upon our old acquaintance and past transactions by which we have mutually benefited in some degree, I could not resist soliciting admission to your chamber. Have you suffered much?" said Ralph, bending forward and allowing the same harsh smile to gather upon his face as the other closed his eyes. "More than enough to please me, and less than enough to please some broken-down hacks that you and I know of, and who lay in their ruin between us, I dare say," returned Sir Mulberry, tossing his arm restlessly upon the coverlet. Ralph shrugged his shoulders in deprecation of the intense irritation with which this had been said, for there was an aggravating, cold distinctiveness in his speech and manner which so grated on the sick man that he could scarcely endure it. "And what is in these past transactions that has brought you here to-night?" asked Sir Mulberry. "Nothing," replied Ralph. "Nothing. There are some bills of my lord's which need renewal, but let them be till you are well. I came," said Ralph, speaking more slowly and with harsher emphasis, "I came to see how grieved I am that any relative of mine though disowned by me, should have inflicted such punishment on you as— "Punishment!" interposed Sir Mulberry. I know it has been a severe one," said Ralph, wilfully mistaking the meaning of the interruption, "and there has been made more anxious. I have been made more anxious to tell you that I disown this vagabond, that I acknowledge him as no kin of mine, that I leave him to take his deserts from you and every man besides. You may wring his neck if you please. I shall not interfere. This story that they tell me here has got abroad, has it?" asked Sir Mulberry, clenching his hands and teeth. "Oh, noised in all directions," replied Ralph. "Every club and gaming room is rung with it. There has been a good song made about it, as I'm told," said Ralph, looking eagerly at his questioner. "I have not heard it myself, not being in the way of such things, but I have been told that it's even been printed for private circulation, and certainly it's all over town." "It's a lie," said Sir Mulberry. "It's a lie. I tell you, a lie. The mare simply took fright." "They say that he frightened her," observed Ralph in the same unmoved and quiet manner. "Some say he frightened you. But that's a lie, I know. I have said that boldly, a score of times. I am a peaceable man, but I cannot hear folks tell that of you. No, 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 no." When Sir Mulberry found coherent words to utter, Ralph bent forward with his hand to his ear, and a face as calm as if every line of sternness had been cast in iron. "When I am off this cursed bed," said the invalid, actually striking at his broken leg in the ecstasy of his passion, "I'll have such revenge as never a man has had yet. By God, I will! Accident favouring him, he has marked me for a week or two, but I'll mark him with a mark he shall carry to his grave. I'll slit his nose and his ears. I'll flog him, maim him for life. I'll do more than that. I'll drag that pattern of chastity, that pink of prudery, his delicate sister, I'll drag her through." It might have been thought that even Ralph's cold-blooded tingled in his cheeks at that moment. It might have been that Sir Mulberry remembered that, knave and usury as he was, he must in some early time of infancy have twisted his arm around her father's neck. He stopped, and menacing with his hand confirmed the unuttered threat with a tremendous oath. "It is a galling thing," said Ralph, after a short term of silence, "a galling thing," during which he had eyed the sufferer keenly, "to think that the man about town, the rake, the roue, the rook of 20 seasons, should be brought to pass by a mere boy." Sir Mulberry darted a wrathful look at him, but Ralph's eyes were bent upon the ground, and his face wore no other expression than one of thoughtfulness. "A raw, slight stripping," continued Sir Mulberry, "against a man whose very weight might crush him, to say nothing of kill him." The sick man made an impatient gesture, which Ralph chose to consider as one of acquiescence. "Ha!" he said, "I thought so. That was before I knew you. Yes, you might be pretty sure. He is light and active, I suppose, but those are slight advantages compared with mine. Luck, these hangdog outcasts have it. He'll need all the luck he can get when we meet again, said Sir Mulberry. Let him fly where he will. Oh, returned Ralph quickly, he doesn't dream of that. He is here, good sir, waiting your pleasure, here in London, walking the streets of noonday, carrying it off jauntily, looking for you, I swear, said Ralph, his face darkening, and his own hatred getting the upper hand of him for the first time as this gay picture of Nicholas presented itself. As if we were the only citizens of a country where it could be safely done. I'd give good money to have him stabbed in the heart and rolled into the kennel for the dogs to devour. As Ralph, somewhat to the surprise of his old client, vented this little piece of sound family feeling and took up his hat preparatory to departing, Lord Frederick Verysoft looked in. Why, what in that devil's name, Hawk, have you and Nickleby been talking about? Said the young man. I never heard such insufferable rot. Croak, 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 bow, wow, wow, what has it been all about? Sir Mulberry has been angry, my lord, said Ralph, looking towards the couch. Not about money, I suppose. Nothing has gone wrong with the business, has it, Nickleby? No, my lord, returned Ralph. On that point we can always agree. Sir Mulberry has been calling to mind the cause of... There was neither necessity nor opportunity for Ralph to proceed, for Sir Mulberry took up the theme and vented his threats and oaths against Nicholas almost as ferociously as he had done before. Ralph, who was no common observer, was surprised to see that this tirade proceeded the manner of Lord Frederick. As this tirade proceeded the manner of Lord Frederick Verysoft, who at the commencement had been twirling his whiskers with a most dandified and listless air, underwent a complete alteration. He was still more surprised when Sir Mulberry, ceasing to speak, the young lord angrily and almost unaffectedly requested never to have the subject renewed in his presence. Mind that, Hawk, he said with unusual energy. I will never be a party to, or permit, if I can help it, a cowardly attack upon this young fellow. Cowardly? Interrupted his friend. Yes, said the other, turning full upon him. If you had told him who you were, if you had given him your card and found out afterwards that his station or character prevented your fighting him, it would have been bad enough then. Upon my soul, it would have been bad enough then. As it is, you did wrong. I did wrong too, not to interfere, and I am sorry for it. What happened to you afterwards was as much the consequence of accident as design, and more your fault than his, and it shall not, with my knowledge, be cruelly visited upon him. It shall not, indeed. With this emphatic repetition of his concluding words, the young lord turned upon his heel, but before he had reached the adjoining room, he turned round the back again and said with even greater vehemence than he had displayed before, I do believe now, upon my honour, I do believe that his dear sister Kate is as virtuous and modest a young lady as she is a handsome one. And of the brother I say this, that he acted as a brother should, and in a manly and spirited manner, and I can only wish with all my heart and soul that any one of us came out of this matter half as well as he does. So saying, Lord Frederick Verysoft walked out of the room, leaving Ralph Nickleby and Sir Mulberry in most unpleasant astonishment.
"Well, is this your pupil?" asked Ralph softly. "Or has he come fresh from some country parson?"
Oh, green fools, take these fits sometimes, growled Sir Mulberry Hawk, biting his lip and pointing to the door. You leave him to me. Ralph exchanged a familiar look with his old acquaintance, for they had suddenly grown confidential again in this alarming surprise, and he took his way home, thoughtfully and slowly.